Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to be showing you how to use the join and add waves method. So first open up your MusiCode v12 Azure project, and this should be your cloned version of MusiCode v12, which will be in the My Projects tab. Alright, so when you've opened that, hit run on free compute. This will open you up to the Jupyter directory, and then select lesson 4 join and add waves. So when you open the notebook, the first thing you should do is select kernel and then restart and run all. So this will restart the kernel and it will then run each cell of code. So you need to make sure that you always run the setup code at the beginning of every MusiCode session or you will run into errors. So make sure that you always run this at the beginning of every session. Okay, the first thing we'll learn about here is time edit. And so time edit is a way to edit the total duration of a waveform. So there's two modes, one of which we'll be using primarily. So the relative mode is the default mode which we will be working with. So relative mode works with musical rhythms. We can edit waveform durations to be quarter notes, eighth notes, measures, or any other sensible rhythmic value. And remember, the relative mode will change depending on the BPM. And so if we had set this BPM to be 200, the quarter note is going to be shorter. It's going to be, less time in duration. And so if we made this 60, the quarter note is now going to be longer in length. So relative mode will be different depending on the BPM that you set here. So the second mode, which sometimes is useful but we won't work with too much, is absolute mode, where you can set things in seconds. And so if you look at this example, right now, if we're in absolute mode, this would be considered 1 second, not one measure. So just point out that difference, but for the most part, just think of it in terms of relative rhythmic values. Okay, so let's look at an example. So we have a waveform here, and then we're going to time edit that waveform to be 2 bars. So the original is 1 bar, and we're wanting to time edit it to be 2 bars. And so it's going to make up for that lack of information by adding in silence. And so because these two are different, we're adding in that silence to get the total duration to be 2 bars. So if this number is greater than this number, then it adds silence. On the other hand, if you pass in a number that is smaller, so maybe we'll do 1/2, so now we're actually going to be removing half of this information, right? So it's a total of 1, and we say time edit it to be just a half note. So we'll actually cut out all of that information, right? And so then we can run that, and then it'll give us our time edited waveform like that. So another useful method is the time method. And so this prints the total duration in seconds. So this is going to tell you, how long a waveform is, so you can sort of compare. And this can be a useful tool, which I'll get into a little bit more when I discuss the value error and how to troubleshoot that, because this is one of the main ways to do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the primary join waves method. So the join waves method is how we create sequences of waves. So let's just look at this first example. So we have note 1, which is just a single C, triangle wave, quarter note. And so we're storing each of these waves in a variable called note 1, note 2, note 3, note 4. So each of these is a waveform with a different pitch, right? But everything else is pretty much the same. So we can use m.joinWaves and then use 2 sets of parentheses on each side. And then you're going to pass in each of the waves that you would like to join together. And remember, these are joining horizontally, not vertically. So this is how you create a sequence over time, right? So we say melody equals m.joinWaves. We pass in the variable names, so note 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to check the melody time, which we'll display here. And then we can bounce the melody, which sounds like this. Okay, so you can see those notes that were played right there. So this is how we create horizontal sequences, right? And we can actually create chords using the createWave method to actually create a chord progression. So we define a C major, F major, A minor, and then G major. And we store those in these variables here. And then we define a new variable called chord progression. And then we use joinWaves to put this into a sequence, into a chord progression. And then we're checking the time. And we can see that we have created an 8-second loop. And then let's go ahead and bounce that and listen. All right, so we're able to take those waves and put them one after another, like that. So the add waves method is going to be different. The add waves is adding waves vertically. So if I have two pitches and I want them to happen at the exact same time and I want them to sound together in a harmony, then add waves is the method you should use. So you have sort of the horizontal joining here, and then you have the vertical here. So just make sure you understand the distinction between those two. Okay, so we create a C3 and a G3 like that, and then we can add them together into an interval by using m.addWaves, then note C3 and note G3. And then this is going to create the harmony, which we can listen to here. Right, so we can hear them now sounding together. Okay, so an error that you can run into when using the add waves method here is if we pass in waveforms of different sizes, this will produce a value error. And so we can look at this note C3 and we can see that it is a 1 measure duration. And then we have this note, which is going to be a 2 measure duration. And so when we want to add these together here, we're going to run into an error because these two waveforms are not the same shape. And so mathematically, they can't be added together in a sensible way. And so in order to fix this error, these values need to be the same, right? And so the way that we can sort of solve this is first by analyzing the value error message that we've gotten. So the first thing we see is that it's pointing at a line of code. So it's pointing at interval, which is right here. So this is obviously having some sort of problem. And then it's also pointing you towards this here, which is giving you an indication as to what might be happening. So the way we troubleshoot this is you take each note or each wave that is being added together here, and you run the time method on it. So now we have note C3 time, note G3 time. So we see that they are different. So this is what's causing the error. And so one thing I find is that when you're adding many different waves together, it's easy to lose track of the duration of things. And so you can use .time on any wave to give you the duration in seconds so that you can sort of troubleshoot this problem. So in order to fix this, what we do is we redefine our notes and we set the same value for this as we did here. And we also could have used the time edit. So for example, if we said time edit like that, this would also do the same thing. But ultimately we need these two to be the same number. So when we run that, we'll be able to see 4 all across the board. And we could have done the same or something similar by doing this, 4. And so now when we add these intervals together, we now get a nice interval. Cool. Okay, so this can be a little bit tricky, so make sure that you utilize this .time method, and when things are not adding up here and you're getting this error, go ahead and run .time for each of the variables in your add wave statement, and it should bring some light to which of these is different and what kind of needs to change to get everything aligned. All right, so that is everything for this. I will see you in the next video.